Hello, everyone. Whether it is setting bodybuilding records or saving the day as an action hero, I'm always looking out for my next role to make an impact. That's why I'm excited to join Zimmer Biomet as a Chief Movement Officer. I love the title, Chief Movement Officer. Now, this is a company that is focused on developing innovative products, solutions, and technologies to maximize mobility and improve health, which really resonates with me. See, I knew that combining my expertise in strength and in fitness and my passion for inspiring healthy living with this team would create something really powerful. Together, we would inspire people to build healthy habits, maintain mobility through movement, and take an active role in their wellness. So I am excited to join forces with this amazing team of 18,000 team members from around the world who are committed to moving you forward. So let's get moving together.
All right. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here with Lori Winkler to have this conversation. So I had several questions to start, but after this video, I have to ask.
Yes.
All right. When somebody came to you from an HR perspective and said, we're trying to bring this person.
Yes.
And call him a Chief Movement Officer, or did you come up with this title?
Yeah, I'd love to take credit for coming up with the title, but that was not my case. That was the marketing team along with my CEO. I was, however, asked about other potential celebrities.
Okay.
And one thought I had, I love Arnold, I just met him last week and he's wonderful to work with, but I thought about Mick Jagger because you could say move like Jagger, right? Because we are in the mobility space, but we felt that Arnold was really better suited for our mission and our vision and our target customer base. So we're really excited. We just announced it last week. I think I was talking to Steve, one of the guys from day one, the day that we announced it. So everybody got pretty excited about sharing the video here.
Yeah, I used to live in California, so I was actually there when he was elected governor.
We're not going to go to the politics.
Without getting into politics, but it was really a fun experience nonetheless. But that's wonderful. So I look forward to learning more about how he performs as your Chief Movement Officer.
He'll be assessed like every other employee, right? He'll have a performance review. But
I'd like to see his annual evaluation there, Lori.
I don't want to deliver it, I can tell you that. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess first question, please tell us about your company, almost 100 years old, 18,000 employees operating in 100 countries you mentioned.
Yes.
And kind of being a technology company with a very specific wellness and movement focus.
Absolutely, so I'm with a company called Zimmer Biomet. We are one of the largest orthopedics companies in the world. So when you think about large joints, your hips, your knees, shoulders, we do replacement. So when we get to a certain point in life, sometimes younger than others, we find that we need to have our knees replaced. Sometimes it's partial, sometimes it's whole knee. We do hip replacement, we do upper extremities, we do foot and ankle. We're in robotics, surgical, trauma. And we've been around for just under 100 years. Company's been through tremendous changes, multiple integrations, because we integrated Zimmer and Biomet back in 2015, and we continue to transform the company. But as you said, we are in 100 countries. I have employees all over the world, 18,000 in all. And we compete with companies like Stryker and divisions of Johnson & Johnson. So, that's what we do, and it's a pretty exciting space to be, and we're really excited about robotics and further diversifying so that we've got a lot of offerings for our customers.
Exactly. So a lot of changes you mentioned in terms of your structuring and merging, leadership changes over especially the last several years have been quite exciting to say the least with the pandemic, and also kind of the coming back to the office for many companies across different countries. So how do you manage change? How do you keep employees excited and in this kind of very uncertain environment?
Yeah. So I always like to give a little bit of context. My company is headquartered in the United States in a town called Warsaw, Indiana. which is a very remote part of Indiana. It's about 2.5 hours from Indianapolis and about 3 hours from Chicago, not too far from Fort Wayne. And our leadership team was always geographically dispersed even before COVID. We were all in different parts of the United States and different parts of the world. What we have enabled and continue to enable is a remote workforce. So there are some team members that must be in the office because they're in manufacturing or they're supporting manufacturing, they're in quality, regulatory. But for the most part, we've said you can continue to work from home as long as you remain engaged, and we have very specific tactics for ensuring that. This has been a tremendous competitive advantage for us because when we're recruiting talent, we are not limited, not that this is a bad thing, but we are not limited to the state of Indiana, so to speak, or to Warsaw, Indiana. We're able to recruit talent from all over the world, all over the United States, because we say, look, home office, but you have to do some traveling. So that's been a really big plus for us. And in our engagement, our annual engagement surveys, every year, the remote work and the flexibility is one of our highest scoring dimensions. It's usually in the high 90s. So our employees are really thriving in that environment. But you have to be very intentional about that. And we do have folks come into the office in Indiana, but it's by their choice or their manager is having them come in for very specific reasons. But to sit in front of a computer and talk on the phone, why not do that from the comfort of your own home versus doing it in an office? That's my personal philosophy. It's not necessarily the most popular right now, but it's mine. So I think that really helps us with our culture.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I totally agree with you in terms of the ability to recruit talent nationally, globally, especially in today's trends of like low unemployment, especially in the United States, especially like in South Florida with like a 2.8% unemployment. It's very hard to attract talent, especially in this very area. So even as a university, as a school, we actually try to recruit at least statewide, nationally, and where we're looking into some HR to recruit globally. But the kind of the other side of the coin on this situation, and when there is this very important movement towards returning to office, and many, especially C-level executives, want everybody to come back to the office. And the two arguments they would say is that the first one is the culture. So how about the culture, the innovation, which I guess your company wants to innovate, especially in the product development, and also like sometimes the training of younger talent. People would come and tell me, we had an employee came here like after a year and a half, he or she left and never actually came to the office, never met anybody, so never felt connected, and that's why he or she left the company. So how do you respond to those kind of 2-3 immediate criticisms?
Yeah. So a couple of things that come to mind is that I think a culture transcends, this is my personal view, transcends whether you're physically together or not. I think if you have a strong mission, and our mission is to alleviate pain and improve the quality of life for people all over the world, and you have a very strong vision, which is to be the boldest med tech company in the world. I think if you've got alignment around what your strategic priorities are, and for us that's people and culture, operational excellence, innovation and diversification, if you've got these commonalities and there's a very clear understanding of the dimensions of the culture, I'm not suggesting that people should not come together, and we're very purposeful. We have town halls, we bring people into the office. When the leadership team comes to town, we make sure that folks are in the office, they're in the office working on projects, especially the product development teams in partnership with manufacturing. But I don't believe that a culture is driven by the fact that people are sitting in a room together. I believe that relationships, yes, they can be strengthened when you're physically together, but I think relationships can transcend the physical location or proximity of folks. That is not a popular belief, but I think if we looked at the data for these companies that have mandated a return to work, we would see, maybe not right away, but I'd love to see like the 3-year data, attrition rates, and I think that's happening now, attrition rates really rising because folks have become very accustomed to what I say is the new normal. It's just the normal now. Yeah. So that's my view on that.
One specific question is actually, people say in the United States where we see this kind of trend of flexible work schedules and because of the low unemployment and so forth, but many other countries that don't have such a tight labor market, there's a mandate that work from office, nobody complains, or at least nobody resigns. How do you compare like the 99 countries outside the US that you operate?
Yeah, so we are super flexible when it comes to what needs to happen in a specific region, and even more so in a specific country.
Okay.
And that's because we're governed by different employment laws. And I'm sure this audience is more than well aware of that. I will say that my friends over in Europe are asking, why don't we go to a 4-day work week? They're always pushing the 4-day work week.
Okay.
And we say, look, we give you plenty of flexibility, so we're not going to 4-day. But we do have folks that work remotely from in all countries, but there's a lot of latitude in the context of management there. So.
Yeah. You mentioned attrition, so I saw your numbers are very low attrition, which is quite remarkable. So how do you achieve that besides the flexible work environment, talent development, training, support, culture? We
have a very heightened focus on engagement because we do an annual engagement survey every year. It's facilitated by a third party. And for many years, we were kind of stuck below benchmark. And we brought a new CEO into the organization a year ago, and our engagement scores went to top quartile. And we're really excited about that. But another tactic that we put into place were engagement strategies for all of our sites. So every single one of our manufacturing or sales sites was assigned a leader, and then an executive leadership team member would sponsor that site. And we would ensure that folks were coming into the office, were having town halls, were having Ask Me Anything sessions, very informal, where we're just doing Q&A with the leaders. And I would say that because we had such an intentional plan and we had new leadership, I really think that helps to keep our folks retained. We also have a very meaningful learning and development program that we sort of segment by leading oneself, leading others, and leading leaders. And we've got courses that are either self-directed, online, in person. We have an executive leadership development program where it's a cohort of high potentials that travel the world and solve big problems for the organization. So all of these things I think have helped to contribute to retention.
I would agree with that because as a business school, we offer a lot of leadership programs, and we actually monitor attrition in those organizations, and employees, besides actually being more productive, they actually will specify and say, well, because of the training program, this company cares about me. They care about my development, whether it's like leading myself, leading others, or at the different levels from middle managers all the way to high level executives, specifying that and saying, well, this company cares about me, especially this longer term, not like one weekend in Boston is not going to cut it, but saying that we have this multi-month, multi-year programs that in terms of training contributes to lower attrition. That's a very good point. Well, in this day and age, I have to ask about AI. There is no panel without AI. So, but the question I'll ask somewhat differently, not how you're using it, but how do you respond to the question from an HR perspective? AI is going to replace jobs, and you are here to take my job, whatever that may be. So how do you respond from an HR perspective?
From a very honest and transparent place, which is that my organization, although it's a Fortune 500 public company, we operate like a PE-funded startup. And we just built an infrastructure around learning and development. We have a great talent acquisition department that we just brought in-house. And I would say that we are not leveraging AI to its full potential. So we have not yet had to deal with that question. There's more concern, or to be very frank, there's more concern around security and confidentiality when it comes to AI. That's more of the conversation that I hear in my organization, in HR. AI plays in a big space in our company, frankly, in our IT systems, obviously, and in our commercial sales organization. But in HR, we've not yet tackled it.
Interesting. Well, of course, if you want to get to the 4-day week you mentioned, AI could actually help
Might be
there. But interestingly, it doesn't come from HR. HR will actually probably face the consequences, or at least the impacts.
Don't we always? We face the consequences.
Exactly, yes. So usually when I come with technology, some of the areas that from marketing, from sales, there's a lot of potential to, not actually replace jobs per se, but more about, facilitating tasks, realizing that you don't need as many people because, your people can become more efficient, more productive. So that's going to be an interesting transition.
We'll get there when we cross that bridge. We're not there yet, though. We're not there yet.
Yes, but the HR will actually face the consequences.
Sure.
So it's preparing for the future of work. So kind of switching gears a little bit, I was very fascinated with your career progression. So please tell us about your career and your different transitions from J&J and to the latest company, please.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so what's really interesting, what got me excited to be able to be here with all of you is that I grew up here. I grew up in Hollywood, Florida. And I went to college in South Florida, and I actually lived here for many, many years. I was working for a company in Miami called Cordis. It was a big public company in the cardiovascular space, and I was the executive assistant to the CEO there. And J&J acquired that company in 1996, and I figured, I'm going to be out of a job, but I got to know the Johnson & Johnson folks pretty well, and they said, you know what, we'd love for you to stay with Johnson & Johnson. Would you consider a career in HR, which I hadn't really thought about? I said, all right, let me see what that's all about. I'm good with people, right? So they paid for me to go back to school. I got a master's in human and organizational development at Barry University, and I moved into HR at Johnson & Johnson. And then I just kind of worked my way up. Started out recruiting tool die mold makers for manufacturing and just went into lots of different HR rotations. And then Johnson & Johnson, the mothership, is in New Jersey. So they moved us up to New Jersey in 2004, and my career really took off then. And in 2016, I was there for 23 years. In 2016, I made the decision to leave to take a bigger job with a company called Cardinal Health, which is a big global pharmaceutical distribution company based in Ohio. And I worked there for 3 years. And then the CEO of Zimmer Biomet, who at the time was not yet the CEO, but somebody that I worked with at Johnson & Johnson down here in Miami, he called me and out of the blue and said, I'd like you to be my global VP of HR at Zimmer. And I started there at the beginning of 20, and then I was promoted to CHRO. But look, I came from really humble beginnings, and I worked my way up, and that was the only job that was pretty much handed to me, because he's like, I want you in the job, but I've had to compete for every other job I've ever had. But it's been a really interesting experience. And then during COVID, all of us were all over the United States, and my accountant said, you own a house in Florida, what are you doing in New Jersey? Go back home. So I renovated my house in Florida, and I'm back here. So it's like full circle for me, which makes it even more special to be here with all of you.
That's wonderful. We are just about out of time. So let me, if there was one thing in your whole illustrious career, what would that be? What would be one piece of advice you're going to give to emerging HR professionals, aspiring CHROs? What would be one piece of advice?
Yeah, so I've come to learn this both really personally, but I try to bring it through to my professional life, is stay true to who you are and lead from your heart, because people know when you're not being your real self. Authenticity and being a human-based leader makes all the difference. So bring that caring and that love into the workspace, because it makes a huge difference, especially now, especially with everything we've been through, this collective experience that we had several years ago that will change us forever. So that empathy, authenticity, and just showing love for your people really makes a big difference. I try to do that.
That's wonderful.
Wonderful.
So I'd like to thank Lori for a great conversation. Definitely HR is becoming very important in forming the culture, ensuring the success of the workforce, building a very productive workforce. And despite how AI will change things in the future and hopefully make the workforce even more productive and happier and more remote and flexible. But with that, I'd like to thank you again.
So
it was a great conversation, and it's a great pleasure to have you here.